Tonight, resignation in disgrace, the end of a remarkable career in Congress. A special focus on the front line of defense in medical care, the crisis in ambulance service. On the Healthbeat, a little head-banging, and a double feature review from Jeffrey Lyons, Cyndi Lauper in Vibes, and The Blob is back.
From the Independent News, this is USA Tonight with Brad Holbrook.
Good evening. For the better part of 2 decades, he was one of the most popular politicians in the nation's largest city. But the congressional career of 10-term New York City Representative Mario Biaggi is over tonight. Gone the way of the now-defunct Bronx-based WTOG defense contractor, which he was convicted of aiding illegally. Alec Roberts has the emotional story of an anything-but-routine ending to an anything-but-routine political career.
Throughout my 20 years in Congress, I have always tried to put the interest of my constituents first. It is because of this that I announced my resignation from the House of Representatives, effective immediately.
It was a tearful end to one of the most remarkable careers of any public official. Mario Biaggi perennially returned to Congress by a district that loved him, resigning in disgrace, his personal and professional reputation forever tarnished. The resignation came one day after the 70-year-old congressman's conviction on racketeering, bribery, and extortion charges in connection with the WTOG scandal, and just 3 days after an appeals court upheld his conviction last year for taking a free trip from a Brooklyn Democratic leader. Today, Biaggi's family and wife of 47 years stood with him in his congressional office.
That it's very disturbing to me that my husband's career has to end in this fashion. It was a great career.
Biaggi was asked if he had ever taken a bribe.
Absolutely not. Not a single penny, gift, trip, nor a share of stock ever came to me was ever in my name. And I've said this time and time again.
Biaggi's was an American success story. Born of immigrant parents, he rose to become the most decorated cop on the New York City police force, stopping 10 bullets in a 23-year career. In 20 years in Congress, he sponsored legislation that made mass transit accessible to the elderly and handicapped, and extended low-interest loans to part-time students. More than his sponsorship of legislation, Mario Biaggi will be remembered by his constituents for his service. They say they'll remember how he helped them with Social Security problems, or veterans benefits, or with a light bill to get the electricity turned back on.
71 years old, how could you do that to a person like that who's did good for all his life to all these people?
He was good to the people in the Bronx. And if you wanted help, he would go out of his way to help you.
At the Middletown Road Senior Citizen Center, the people said they'd vote for him again.
He made a mistake, but what could you do about it? But I am willing to forgive him. That's all I could say.
I hope with the passage of time, people will look back and say, he really cared, and nothing can or will take away all the good he has done.
The congressman faces 2.5 years for his earlier conviction, up to 40 years in prison for the WTOG case. In New York, this is Alec Roberts reporting.
In Washington, Treasury Secretary James Baker is resigning. Baker, who has been with the Reagan administration for 8 years, is leaving after the Republican National Convention to become chairman of George Bush's presidential campaign. The president appointed Wall Street banker and former New Jersey Senator Nicolas Brady to the post of Treasury Secretary. The White House waited until the stock market closed today to make the announcement so as not to upset Wall Street. U.S. Attorney General nominee Richard Thornburgh says that he would make war on drugs his top priority if confirmed.
With law enforcement responsibilities have to regard the scourge of narcotics and dangerous drugs as public enemy number one.
The former Pennsylvania governor testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee on the first day of his confirmation hearings. He has been picked by President Reagan to succeed outgoing Attorney General Edwin Meese. Under intense questioning, Thornburgh denied he was responsible for withholding from Congress a 1975 Justice Department report on drug trafficking by Panamanian leaders. That report also cited corruption among U.S. narcotics agents. The trial of former White House aide Oliver North is being postponed until after this fall's presidential election. By putting aside the previously scheduled September 20th date, U.S. District Judge Gerhard Gesell is responding to requests for delays from both sides in the case, giving them more time to go over the thousands of top-secret documents. No new trial date has been set. It'll be sometime in 1989. North is charged with illegally conspiring to divert money from the Iran arms sales to Nicaragua's Contra rebels. When we come back, the crisis in ambulance service. A special focus on the emergency within emergency medical services, the problems that are costing lives, and the solutions that might help save them. Stay with us.
USA Tonight, brought to you by Metamucil.
Swift, professional, efficient response in a medical emergency saves lives. Victims in medical crises, whether from accident or attack, are almost totally at the mercy of some stranger at the other end of a phone call or a radio call. The difference between life and death can often be measured in seconds. Time itself becomes life. Perhaps the best example of a system at its worst is right now in New York City. Ed Miller begins tonight's Focus Report.
The ambulance had come in time. I feel that my husband could have been saved.
Ruth Weider is in mourning for her husband. 76-year-old Joseph Weider died from a heart attack while he waited almost 1 hour for a New York City ambulance.
I would say they murdered him. They murdered him.
The Weider family is not alone in their misery. In recent months, several New Yorkers have died waiting for ambulances that came too late or never came at all. EMS service in New York is clearly in a crisis.
17 Adam, 17 Adam for the overdose, 17 Adam.
New York City ambulances answer roughly 3,000 calls each day. To bring help to those that need it, they must first overcome New York's congested, narrow, and pothole-riddled streets. Those conditions force many ambulances into the repair shop. All those broken down ambulances is the reason why, if you dial 911, an ambulance may not arrive as quickly as you want it. At its worst a couple of weeks ago, more than 50% of the 237 ambulances the city owns were out of service. City officials agree they don't need new ambulances. They need a better system to keep the ones they have working.
They would send ambulances to garages which were already filled, where all the repair bays were being utilized. And at other garages, there would be empty repair bays and mechanics standing around with nothing to do.
The situation is now being given first aid. Ambulances are now being repaired by the city's sanitation department, which owns the largest non-military truck repair shop in the Western world.
The principal need is not for more resources to be thrown at the problem, but rather to manage the resources that we have well. It really is a crisis of competence.
He's violent, but you said he's not breathing, so he can't hurt you.
New York EMS claims that 52% of the time an ambulance is there within 10 minutes of your call. Some other New York City officials say that response time is not good enough and even charge those figures have been manipulated. The people on the front line say there's also the question of personnel, experience, and money.
Keep the people we have more. We have to keep the experienced people, maybe get them, some raises, things like that.
Because they leave right away, huh?
Yeah, they leave quickly.
Quick turnover?
Yes.
Compounding the problem is the large number of unnecessary calls to 911, sending ambulances where they are not needed. That problem is even more frustrating and cannot be fixed in a sanitation repair shop. All of this, of course, is little solace to victims and their families.
911 is the wrong number.
In New York, I'm Ed Miller.
Well, if New York is a patient in need of intensive care, who will supply the prescription for the future? The road to recovery may run through Dade County, Florida, where Dave Willingham found what is perhaps the best emergency medical service in the country.
In the Miami suburb of Coral Gables, a speeding car slams into a van carrying school students. 17 people are injured, some critically.
Let him work. Let him work.
Within seconds, rescue squads from Coral Gables were on the way. So were units from Dade County's Metro Fire Rescue. The response is fast here. On average, rescue units in this county reach the scene within 4 minutes. Response to this crash also was smooth, and nobody died. The same scenario would happen for any disaster in Dade, thanks to a coordinating council which works regularly to link the county's 5 EMS forces. This is one of the factors that makes Dade EMS people feel their system is among the best.
I've never seen a system has advanced as ours, including the air rescue program, the level of service that we provide to the public, the paramedics, the training.
The Dade Metro EMS Operation Chief Perez works for is linked up with 4 municipal departments to form the county-wide system. Dade Metro is the keystone. With a hefty budget of $30 million a year, it operates 30 rescue units and a medevac helicopter. Perez says it's unique in the USA that each unit is staffed by 3 fully trained paramedics. Good ones.
They know what to do when they get on the scene, and you can trust their judgment when they call in with information on the patient.
EMS systems here are operated by the fire departments and work hand in hand with them. A comprehensive maintenance program keeps a rolling stock rolling. Dade EMS claims a breakdown rate during calls of less than 1%. Tight controls monitor the EMS system here, including a quality assurance board, a newly formed fire board, and the county commission. But the most common criticism of the Dade system is it's expensive, about $30 per year for every person in the county. Some say it could do the job just as well with less money. But Patty Karousatos sees another bottom line.
I feel lives are being saved because of the quick response that we have from the fire rescues in the county.
And saving lives, she says, is what this is all about. I'm Dave Willingham in Miami.
Meantime, the Ford Motor Company is recalling more than 15,000 ambulances. The problem with their 1983 to 1987 Econoline model is faulty heater hoses. Ford says the hoses could burst or leak and cause a fire under the hood. Last year, Ford recalled the same models to fix fuel system problems that also caused fires. Up next on the Healthbeat, the little bump on the head that could really knock you for a loop. And later, our film critic Jeffrey Lyons with a double feature review, Cyndi Lauper in Vibes and the Blob in The Blob.
Mister, we're trying to watch it.
USA Tonight's Healthbeat, brought to you by Advil.
Ironically, head injuries, even concussions, are often just brushed off as relatively minor in the long-term scheme of things. But now many doctors are taking a closer look at the nearly 500,000 Americans who have a head injury every year and finding out that those head injuries can be very serious, even if the symptoms aren't apparent for years. Karen Hasby has more.
It can happen if you fall off your bike or get involved in a fender bender while playing sports or horsing around in the playground. Any accident which involves a blow to the head, even if there's no visible damage, can be serious.
Head injuries of all sorts, including minor head injuries, happen when there is a sudden movement of the brain inside the skull. The brain is soft, it is movable, and when the head hits something suddenly, like a dashboard, or is struck suddenly, the brain literally moves inside the skull. It can twist, it can be bruised, and this is the type of damage that causes damage to nerve cells that can affect a person's thinking and memory and so on permanently.
For decades, doctors have told patients that the headaches, dizziness, and confusion which often follow a head injury would eventually go away on their own and not to worry. If the symptoms didn't go away, patients might be left to think their problems were psychological, that they were going crazy. Now, because of more sophisticated diagnostic techniques like magnetic resonance imaging, doctors can find very minute problems in the brain. But still, the most significant way to find out if there was damage is to talk to the patient.
People may find themselves having more trouble remembering things, remembering people's names or where they put things, not doing things as quickly. They may find it more difficult to communicate their ideas to someone. They may find it difficult to do more than one thing at a time.
Children are particularly susceptible to this kind of injury. Kids fall and bump their heads so often that parents might be tempted to ignore it. That is not always a good idea.
There are a significant number of kids who, after an injury like that, will often appear to be okay for a while, and it may not be till years later that problems develop in school as subjects become more complex or behavioral problems start to emerge as kids get older.
So how can we tell if anyone, adult or child, has suffered permanent damage? The most important clue is if the usual temporary reactions like confusion, dizziness, forgetfulness, and fatigue just won't go away. You may have to go back to your doctor and insist that a test like an MRI be done. While there's no way to heal a damaged brain once the injury occurs, having a proper diagnosis can help a person get therapy or retraining and learn how to cope. I'm Karen Hasby.
USA Tonight's Health Beat, brought to you by Advil.
As we reported earlier, James Baker resigned tonight. He's leaving the Treasury Department and going back to a job he held 8 years ago, that of George Bush's campaign manager. Of course, 8 years ago, he was President Reagan's campaign manager. Here's John Aubuchon with more on the ever-increasing political nature of the Reagan White House.
This is the White House, not Bush campaign headquarters, but it's getting harder to tell the difference. The long-expected announcement of Treasury Secretary James Baker's departure to head the Bush campaign got high-profile treatment.
But as you go, let me tell you this. You're a friend whom I will miss. You've been a secret of our success. Now, Jim, go do it for George.
The president named former Senator, investment banker Nicolas Brady to take over at Treasury. At his real campaign headquarters, Bush welcomed Baker with open arms.
Very, very grateful to Jim Baker for once again being at my side. All yours.
Thank you. Jim Baker headed Bush's primary campaign against Reagan in 1980 and was White House Chief of Staff in the first Reagan term. More and more, President Reagan has been turning the powers of the presidency to getting George Bush elected, even doing things he otherwise would not have done, like the announcement this week that he'll let the controversial plant closing bill become law to diffuse a hot Democratic issue. Bush also hopes to make defense a major issue of his own, already slamming Dukakis as dangerously soft. This week, the president obliged Bush by vetoing the defense authorization bill, charging that congressional Democrats would cripple his Star Wars program and leave the country weak. The measure actually provided more money than the Reagan defense request, and his own defense secretary had recommended he sign it.
What's clear from this week is that Ronald Reagan is prepared to do whatever George Bush wants him to do. And clearly he wanted him not to veto plant closing. He wanted him to veto military authorization, and we'll see what's in store for us next.
The president also sent Bush to argue the American case when the United Nations debated the U.S. downing of an Iranian passenger jet last month. Another high-profile assignment for candidate Bush. And almost every Reagan speech of late has been laced with language praising his vice president.
What we're going to see certainly is Ronald Reagan out on the stump 2-3 days a week come October campaigning for his vice president, and that's pretty potent stuff. Ronald Reagan is still the most popular man in the United States.
So now more than ever, this has become the Reagan-Bush White House. Getting George Bush elected on his own has become one of the top priorities of the final 6 months of the Reagan presidency. John Aubuchon at the White House.
When we come back, the return of the Blob and the return of our film critic, Jeffrey Lyons. Got a double feature for you tonight, more for your money. Got two films to be reviewed by Jeffrey Lyons. The Blob is back, and Cyndi Lauper stars in a movie called Vibes. Jeffrey?
Brad, no, Cyndi Lauper is not the Blob or in the Blob. They're two different movies, rest assured, with very different results. Now, if you know your movies, and I'm sure you do, you'll recall the cult 50s horror flick of the same name, which led to stardom for Steve McQueen, the title player, either because of or despite that part. Here, the movie makers missed the boat, however, deciding to play it all so straight and avoid campiness, hoping to sicken the audience to death instead. A small California town, probably called Backlot City, has been invaded by a blob from outer space, and the gooey thing has no patience, it seems, with anyone online ahead of it at a phone booth.
Help me! Get me Herb! Get Herb Geller! He went down to the diner.
But here's the most effective sequence, when the blob takes in a flick. Now, I'm trying to add some camp here, but the predictable movie plays it so straight-laced that no matter how much goo globs across the screen, there's no terror, really. Just a bit of ho-hum and revulsion. Now to Vibes, and I'll admit this one takes a stretch, but it's goofy fun. Cyndi Lauper makes a very engaging screen debut as a mystic who talks to a friend from the other side named Louise. She comes into her own apartment after a day being studied by a team of shrinks, only to find a con man, Peter Falk, rummaging through her things. And he's not there for a midnight snack.
Yeah? $50,000. And it's all yours if you do a job for me.
Oh, yeah. You're gonna ask me to do something really weird.
Yes, it is weird. He convinces her and another psychic, Jeff Goldblum, to accompany him on a trip to Ecuador to find his son, he tells them. Well, watch how effectively Falk makes thinking off the top of his head look real, ad-lib. It's a wonderfully timed sequence.
This isn't your son's shirt.
Sure it is.
No. This shirt's only been worn by one man, an older man, much too old to be your son.
Did I say my son? No, I'm sorry. I'm his son. It's my father that's missing, Harry Sr.
He's not that old. He's about your age.
I'm adopted. My mother remarried. One of my high school buddies, she saw his picture in my yearbook and whammo.
Falk makes this movie really work. As for the Blob, the only really scary thing is the ending, which leaves the door ajar, you see, for a Blob 2. Those are the Friday night movies. I'm Jeffrey Lyons. Brad?
Blob 3 down the road.
Please, no.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Finally tonight, a little courtroom anecdote for you, one that you won't hear very often. In Houston, Texas, a visiting judge trying to call a noisy courtroom to order picked up the gavel and banged it on the bench. Turns out the gavel was not the gavel. It was a glass whiskey decanter shaped like a gavel. The bottom of it shattered, the glass and 12-year-old whiskey going everywhere. The court reporter, soaked with booze, might have had some explaining to do at home later. The explanation for the decanter gavel is that the usual judge had received it as a gift and kept it there on the bench as a kind of a decoration. No one had thought to warn the visiting judge about it, but then what do you say to him? Don't be too hard on the gavel, Judge. It's still aging? I don't think so. That's USA Tonight. I'm Brad Holbrook. Thanks very much for being with us. Have yourself a good weekend. See you back here Monday. Good night.
Imagine being Sandy, who has 2 brothers, but no mom or dad. To adopt Sandy and her brothers or other special children waiting for a family, call Family Service Center's Project CAN, 531-0481.
20 years together, 44 and